Thanks for coming on again, Ed. And I just want to sort of introduce Ed briefly to everyone who's listening. It might be worth going back and actually having a listen to. We've done two other podcasts with Ed, one where he gives us a background of everything, and I'll link that in the description below. And the other one where we did a really interesting question and answer for sort of things that the community have sent in, some questions that they'd sent in, and we went through that. So that's linked down below as well. But for those that haven't watched those two, are you able just to give us a really brief introduction to who you are, Ed, and what you do?
Sure. Thanks very much, David. Yeah, it's Ed Zneimer. I'm an associate at Seddons. I specialise in real estate finance. So what that means is basically I'm a property lawyer who advises lenders and banks on bridging and development type deals. So that's what I do. Yeah, thank you to David, to yourself, David, for inviting me back on. I would, hasten to add that it's been a very interesting and successful previous couple of podcasts that we've done, which has resulted, as we were just discussing before we went on air, in new clients coming through and lots of interest. So I'm delighted to be back here again, basically. So thank you.
No, that's great. And I'm really happy to hear that. As I said earlier, and if anyone is looking for an awesome solicitor to help them, either from the lender's perspective, or if you're looking to do something privately, do get in touch with Ed. All his details will be in the description as well. So hopefully that'll be fine. But today's sort of chat, we want to basically get a view of the market from the solicitor's perspective. So we've got Ed on, and I just want to have a sort of quick discussion about where you think the market is at the moment in terms of, from your point of view, are things busier than they have been? Are they quieter? Where are we?
I think there is no doubt that things are quieter than they have been. Quieter, I think the best probable comparison is this time last year, or any previous sort of November. Typically, you would expect, building up to Christmas, that the market does get very busy because people want to complete deals before the end of the year, and we're very much now building into that period. Obviously we're not quite there yet, but I would say that in my opinion and in our experience, things have been busier in previous years. So it's not all doom and gloom. There are deals out there, things are happening all the time, and we are busy, but we're not as busy, I would say, that we have as we have been in previous years.
Have you noticed like any difference between the sort of business you're actually getting, or is it kind of just an overall reduction across the board?
I think there is a change in emphasis somewhat. I think there are, more refinances, more loan rewrites from the same lender potentially to go onto a different product once a short-term bridging loan has come to term, new terms have been offered, etc. So more of that kind of work, rather than purchases, certainly, put it that way. So yeah, definitely a change in emphasis, and I think that just has to be reflective of the property market generally, as I think you all appreciate, and anyone listening will appreciate too.
Yes, it was interesting. I was talking to another broker yesterday, or a broker rather, and he was saying that obviously the refinancing side of things is hard, but it is what's keeping things going. People coming off their sort of standard rates or their fixed rates on the sort of regulated side, and then obviously a lot of bridges coming to an end where the exits haven't been as easy to get, especially if the exit was a refinance. And talking to the developers we work with as well, the sort of the sales of the new builds that they've done have been a little slower than normal. So it seems a little a little bit slow, but I'm hoping things will pick up. Obviously, I've seen, and you might have noticed, that some of the sort of standard mortgage rates have dropped a little bit recently, and I'm hoping that will sort of kick in. What have you sort of got any hopeful thoughts there from your point of view, or thoughts at all on where we might be going?
Well, I'm no economist. I've got opinions, and I'm hopeful that, as you just mentioned, rate cuts, etc., may provide the stimulus that we require for the market to pick up. But yeah, definitely picking up on a point that you just made in terms of where and what people are doing with properties that are already in charge, etc. I mean, I've seen, for example, several deals that I acted on where the loan initially was a bridging loan subject to an exit for various units and a new build to be sold, and then because, quite frankly, of the market, what's happened in actuality is that it's turned into a refinance or a different product, and the borrower is now letting those particular units on a buy-to-let basis. So that kind of morphing of product and use of an asset is certainly something that we've seen. In terms of the shorter term, I'm hopeful and would expect, notwithstanding what I said earlier, that December will be a busy month, because it always is. But we'll have to wait and see. And hopefully, things will pick up more generally because of the rates, etc., as we've already alluded to. But we'll have to wait and see. Unfortunately, I do think, but black swan events and the not that there's one currently quite going on, at the moment, but the world has not been helped, no doubt, by the last few years, and there's all sorts of things going on at the moment which I think impact global economics, and we can only hope for better days and better things ahead that will hopefully alleviate the sort of slowdown that we're currently experiencing, and hopefully it'll be short term.
Yeah, it's been a rough couple of years, to say the least, I think, but I think since 2020, so yeah, it can only get better, as they say. You mentioned, obviously, a lot of people sort of transitioning and maybe being a bit more flexible within their own products, as in going from bridge to buy-to-let within their own sort of product range. Has there been any sort of, have you noticed anything with the sort of underwriting or the sort of conveyancing side of things that you're working on, or the property side, where the lenders are actually sort of being a little bit more flexible to get the deals done, or are people actually being less flexible because of the inherent risks in the economy at the moment, as in taking views?
I actually think it's probably the latter. I think, if any given lender, I think there's a differentiation to be made. I think if any given lender already has a property in charge and they're working with that particular borrower, and that particular borrower, is struggling to realize the initial exit, then we would hope that, I'd say responsible, but that's not quite the right word, but a good lender, responsible or otherwise, will do what they can, shall we say, to work with that borrower to assist and do what they can to keep the deal or the loan alive and maybe morph it onto another product. If you're looking at, however, a lender refinancing another lender or financing a purchase, then I think we are finding that lenders are probably being more risk averse than less risk averse. So taking less views and being more stringent. And I think they can afford to be, in inverted commas, there are less deals to work on, I think, for everyone. So, that I think is bound to result in there being, more caution being taken. But I think people are still being sensible and commercial. But I think everyone is being a bit guarded, and there is no doubt as well. And I don't know whether you've seen this. I'm interested in your views in a moment, but I think it is very fair to say that repossessions are rising and have risen slightly over the last period or so. What are your views on that particular last point in your experience?
It's an interesting one, because we've had I don't personally get involved in that side, but we've been fairly lucky, and we've been working with the borrowers that we have in order to sort of prevent as much of that as possible, which obviously is never the ideal outcome. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if we see over the next sort of little while, especially because we know some of the refinances that we're expecting to repay us are taking a little bit longer, or just not happening at all. So things are having to change, exit plans are having to change. So eventually that may lead to an increase from our point of view. But the space obviously we lend in, it's always a little bit messier. There's always sort of less clear sort of exits. So we're working with people at the moment, but yeah, I can see that happening sort of rather soon. And on that, going back,
I was going to say, sorry to cut in there, but as I described, I mean that's what I'd expect, and that's responsible lending, and you do what you can, and I think it's important that borrowers and lenders, as far as possible, maintain transparent communication, because I think the last thing anyone wants, and this goes to any walk of life really, doesn't it, but panic at the last minute because things aren't quite what everyone hoped they would be. So I think to maintain that dialogue between all parties is very important. And not giving you tips about how to run your business, but I'm sure that's the sort of thing that you will be doing.
No, it is a key pillar, I think, for most lenders, that they're treating customers fairly, but at the same time, you've got to look after your sort of business and make sure you're not letting things
absolutely
on, and it actually doesn't benefit anyone sometimes if you just let the interest build up. So tough.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is a line clearly, and if it's crossed, then you've got to do what you've got to do. Again, as one does in all walks of life as well. So there are commercial realities obviously that come into play, and we're in a very real, hard-nosed world here, and and business is business at the end of the day. But notwithstanding that, communication to the point until the point of no return, I think, is important. So
as going back to obviously the sort of taking views and things, have you noticed from the lender's perspective, have there been sort of more deals that sort of fall out of bed going through the legal process than because of that, or is it are the views more on an underwriting sort of front, that they're just willing not to sort of flex quite as much if something a little unusual comes up? And say, for example, have you seen a decrease in people accepting no search insurance and for the title searches and that kind of thing?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think in my experience on that specific point, lenders have their particular policy and appetite for no search insurance, and I don't think that has changed. So some of my clients operate on a no search and title insurance basis for all of their loans. Some are flexible, and the flexibility is usually down to timescales and remains as such, and whatever works for both parties. So I don't think that aspect has changed, to be frank. So on that specific point, sorry, what was the beginning of that particular question?
It was in terms of if any deals were sort of falling out of bed because of the lack of willingness to maybe take views on any sort of legal points more than
yes. I think the answer to that is yes. I mean, I've had a couple of deals in the last week or so that have unfortunately gone abortive for a variety of reasons, where you may have expected previously, a lender may have taken a view, but in these particular instances, that hasn't been the case, and unfortunately, because of legal issues that have arisen during the course of the due diligence, the deals have fallen out of bed, quite frankly. So not necessarily at an underwriting stage at the initials, but during the progression, when one really gets into the detail.
What are the sort of things that have killed the deals?
Well, so for
any specifics necessarily.
Yeah, no. So for example, not taking a view on satisfaction of pre-commencement to works conditions attached to a planning permission, something like that, where sometimes you may advise your client that frankly that particular condition or a particular condition hasn't been satisfied, and previously they may have taken a view on it, and something they've worked with the borrower to deal with post completion. But I would say something that's quite onerous still to be satisfied, information to be provided. A lender may say, well, that's going to take you X amount of time now to do still, and we're not going to take the risk that it's necessarily going to be signed off by the local planning authority, and we haven't got time, it's not going to work to wait for that to happen. So we're not going to take a view, we're not going to wait, very sorry, and the deal's fallen out of bed.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's because those sort of things are odd ones, and it's I guess it is very much deal dependent, and I can't really comment on that, but on those. But yeah, it's strange if certain places were more flexible. I can see why. It's difficult, and it's something like that. If they start doing it without the conditions, it can be a pain. And obviously, I kind of want to jump topics here slightly. Because, and you mentioned at the start, obviously, you managed to get a couple of clients off the back of being on here, which again, I'm really quite pleased at, and obviously do get in touch, as I said before, with Ed. And obviously the whole point of the podcast is kind of to create a little bit of a community and get people sort of talking to each other and getting to know the guests. And on that, when it comes to the actual sort of law firm side of things, what are the sort of things you guys do in order to actually attract sort of new business? Sort of how's the marketing work?
I think there's any number of different things. Obviously, something like this. So increasing media presence on social media platforms, whether that's verbal, i.e. a podcast, whether it's written. So we put out quite a lot of hopefully interesting updates, legal updates on places like LinkedIn. We attend networking events. I would say the majority of our clients, and even new clients, well, especially new clients, comes from word of mouth and reputation. But I do think, I'm a very strong believer and advocate in marketing and business development. One should never rest on one's laurels. One should always be pushing to open new avenues. And I think the more that one does of any number of things broadly within a networking type capacity, getting out and about, communicating is likely to lead to that. I mean, certainly, one truism, you may recall, and the listeners may even recall, although perhaps not, I had a previous career in recruitment, and that was very hands-on in terms of the requirements to be out there marketing and developing new business. And one thing I'd say is if you don't ask the question, then you're never going to get the answer, right? So I take the view that we should always be asking people, putting ourselves forward, irrespective of anything that comes via reputation and via word of mouth. It's always good to push the boundaries and to try and push the message and the expertise, and to have the belief in what we do being that good that people will, when we communicate with them, when we make them aware of ourselves if they weren't already, for them to hear that, and that can often get the required result. So yeah, that's something that I would say. So it's all about being proactive. It's all about asking the question, in my opinion, and it's all about backing it up with what we were able to produce and offer in terms of service and advice at the end of the day, because that's what in this business people require, and what it's all about.
Yeah, no, well, that's good.
Just one thing I would add. We are delighted that that's the Sevens Real Estate Finance team. We recently won the Solicitor of the Year award in the Bridging and Commercial Awards. So Solicitor of the Year 2023 in the Bridging and Commercial Awards, which is a big accolade for us, and something we're delighted to have picked up. And I think that goes to and is testimony to our work that we do in our team and the expertise that we have. It's something that, for example, that goes on all of our emails now at the moment. That's, I guess, very low level marketing, but that's something obviously that we would flag and we would do. And there's plenty of social media coverage for that we've put out as a firm to push that recognition and to put it out there so that people can see and know about it. And there's no doubt on the back of that particular award, we will and have picked up traction and hopefully clients as well, specifically.
Oh, brilliant. And yeah, congratulations. I think
thank you.
Yeah, that's a pretty big one, really. And I know, obviously, and part of it is it's voted by some judges, isn't it? Some industry professionals, if I'm not mistaken. There's a panel of judges, and they look at sort of testimonials and everything, I believe, anyway. If I'm mistaken, never mind.
No, you're absolutely right, and that's why it is quite. I mean, there's all sorts of awards out there, and I'll talk about this one solely because it's the one that we are very familiar with, and we're delighted to have won. But you're absolutely right, and it's very rigorous. Hence, it's great to have won it. And without going into too much detail or boring, there are two, as I understand it, there are two rooms of judges on a judging day who judge every category, and they're split across, broadly speaking, a room of judges who are lenders and a room of judges who are brokers. So each room, so the lender judge and the broker judges will vote on the Solicitor of the Year award, for example, and every award that comes up. So it's taken very seriously, and yeah, you're right that it is decided by judges. There you go.
Yeah, which that in itself, and I think it has some sway. People can send in testimonials and everything, and just the fact that people would do that is obviously just goes to show obviously you are good, and that's why we use you obviously as a firm, just being transparent with everyone. A lot of our lending does go through Sedens, and they are really great. So but you mentioned obviously as part of the marketing that you guys put out sort of I guess thought leadership sort of updates, that kind of thing. Is there anything interesting lately that's come out, any sort of legal cases that are interesting, or any sort of deals or anything that you guys have done that sort of stand out that might be interesting for the listeners? Put you on the spot there.
Yeah, no, well, there are various important changes to various parts of legislation that impact our practice at the moment, and all property practice. So, without going into details of the rigors and the whys and wherefores, the Building Safety Act 2022, which goes further and beyond the sort of issues associated with with cladding, which I think everyone's been or everyone will be more familiar with. So I would advise that, that's something that people in all property walks of life, borrower, lender, obviously solicitor, needs to be aware of, and the changes that is having, and the concerns that it's having. I mean, basically, it's a whole set of legislation which is designed around ensuring the safety of higher risk, high-rise buildings, etc. The mechanics of it are really quite complex, but suffice to say, anyone living in or buying or involved in a property which falls into that category, would be well advised to get advice on all the repercussions of that, certainly prior to purchasing and whatever else. But and also another thing that I would mention is the reforms and changes which are still yet to be fully passed in respect of rental properties, and specifically the changes that may happen when and if Section 21 notices are abolished. Now, Section 21 notice is a notice that's served by a landlord on a tenant renting a property pursuant to a assured short hold tenancy agreement, which allows the landlord to take possession of the property on no fault grounds from the tenant. And basically, the way that the legislation is moving is in such a way as to provide more protections from the tenant's perspective. And there's talk of, but it's yet to happen, that Section 21s will be abolished, and that's a big area of changes in the buy-to-let market, etc. Which, again, if you're a landlord out there, or if you're considering a buy-to-let portfolio, or if you've got a buy-to-let property, or if you're a tenant, etc., I would advise that you should take advice on and look into, because it's going to, if it goes through, have quite an impact.
Yeah, because I think if that does happen, obviously, like we've got one, it would be it's an interesting one, because I can see it from both sides. It's sort of, yes, somebody wants to be able to, if they're paying the rent and they're not doing anything wrong, it is their home technically. So it always seems a little unfair, but obviously it is the landlord's property. So it's a tough one, and I wouldn't want to come down. And I'm sure if that does come into play, we'll have to we could probably do an entire podcast on just that. So look out for that, everybody. But I'm conscious of the time, as always. It is only 30 minutes in finance, so I think we can wrap up there for now. But I do want to thank Ed again so much for his time, and like I said, all his details are down below. And if he wants to let you know, where can we find you, Ed?
My contact details, is that what you mean? ed.zneimer@settings.co.uk, or I'm on LinkedIn. Geographically, our offices are in New Cavendish Street. The only thing I would add to all of that is, Seddons as a firm is a full service law firm. So we don't only advise on property aspects, specifically real estate finance included in terms of what I do, but we advise on family law, corporate, commercial, employment, and all the other things that you'd expect a full service law firm to be able to offer advice on. So whether you're an individual or a business, please do get in touch, and we can refer you to the requisite specialists within Seddons.
Oh, that is perfect. And yeah, do get in touch with Ed, everybody. And thanks so much for your time, Ed. Appreciate it.